Welcome to Wealthing Talks. I am your host, Alicia Castillo Holley, bringing you real life conversations from Silicon Valley or somewhere around the world. We will talk about disruptors, angel investments, venture capital, and of course, family offices. Join me along with my children, their families, friends, disruptors, and investors as we explore the fascinating world of creating wealth in a completely different and authentic way. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is your host, Alicia Castillo Holley, and it is an absolute pleasure to have Nancy here, Nancy Hayes here with us. Nancy, thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, Alicia. As you know, I've followed you for many years now, and I'm always fascinated to hear what you're up to.
Well, now it is your turn. This is your podcast. Nancy, tell us, what are you doing today and how did you get here?
What I'm doing today is focusing on helping entrepreneurs in particular, and also helping professional women in particular understand about investing in venture. I have started as an angel investor in 2014, knowing very little about it, even though I have a background in finance. As you know, this is a very different kind of finance. And I joined an angel group, which was super helpful to me, working with others, learning from others. And then after a few years, I sort of went out on my own because I had broadened my reach and started attending a lot of things and getting to know a lot of people. So deal flow was not an issue. And also, I had an interest in helping early stage companies. And a lot of the groups, as you know, tend to get a little more conservative as they work together as a group as far as stage. And so what I do now is mostly pro bono things related to helping women entrepreneurs and what we might broadly call underestimated entrepreneurs, and also helping professional people understand, what this world of investing is all about. I do it mostly in the US, but a lot of international.
Well, you just came from a trip, didn't you?
Yes, I was invited by the embassy in Egypt to be the speaker at a 2-day conference on women entrepreneurs, orchestrated by a very talented woman in Middle East, North Africa, who has about 10,000 people attend this conference every year. She takes it around country to country. So we did that, and then we built up another 3 days of activities, meeting with incubators, doing some pitch deck reviews, talking to the Science and Technology University. So I've done that kind of thing in Taiwan as well as here, and of course, a lot of Zoom in many different countries.
And what motivated you to do this type of work?
I had a corporate career. I was a senior executive at IBM. And in my mid 40s, what we call now middlescence, I sort of
I
decided
learned
to
that.
to follow a different path, and I became the CEO of two different social services nonprofits, largely because I wanted to see if I could bring the leadership and management skills developed in corporate to the social services environment. Then I was recruited to be dean of the College of Business at San Francisco State University, and after 6 years, I was vice president of the university. And then I decided to do my own thing. And I wanted to help women in business more broadly. Having been in tech sales at a very early time when there were very few women salespeople, and then as a senior management among a very, very large male dominated but great supportive group, I was always focused on helping the women moving up the corporate ladder or moving into leadership roles. Then in nonprofit, in social services, frankly, most of the employees are women. And so working a lot with women seeing the possibilities of what they could do and
Mm.
breaking down their barriers. And the same in the university. When I took the university job, I thought this will be great. The women will be so much different than when I was in university. And I found not necessarily always the case. So when I left, I wanted to do things with women. And I first started small business because I had been following the work of Mohammed Yunus and
Yeah.
social business around the world and wanted to see if we could help small business be more effective and get more money because we were reading how challenging it is, particularly with women in small business to get loans. So
Yeah.
a colleague and I started a crowdfunding site when rewards-based crowdfunding was new, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and it was oriented on women with small business, was called Mula Hoop. And we sort of modified this to help people who weren't that familiar with the internet building um, uh, their campaign. And what we found over 2.5 years was that most people didn't have a crowd. And so, as far as being successful in crowdfunding, that was one of the keys. So, in the course of doing this, I kept meeting people who were talking about angel and venture. And that's how I ended up getting into venture.
Wow, how fascinating. I did not know that. Yeah. I
So,
was,
a lot of different careers. I'm sort of a general manager.
mm-hmm.
And as I worked in the angel period of time, I found that I enjoyed working with an entrepreneur, even those we weren't investing in,
Yeah.
and helping them tell their story differently or assess whether venture was right for this kind of company. And that's kind of what I focus on doing today, to this day.
That's amazing. So you've seen the business world from many, many, many different lenses. How do you think we create or destroy wealth? What is your vision and your understanding about wealth creation?
Well, from a personal standpoint, I've come in recent years to really stress that wealth needs to be a broader term than money, of
Mhm.
course.
It is.
So putting that aside, but there's this whole thing in wealth, which is, a sense of purpose. If you have a sense of purpose in your life, while it might change, that adds to your perception of wealth. And as we all know, health can make a big difference. And community. And particularly one of the nonprofits I worked in, and one of my passions is working with the elderly and seeing people who don't have a sense of purpose moving forward, particularly out of retirement, leads me to define wealth that way. But corporately and in other kinds of organizations, I think wealth is changing a lot. For example, in nonprofits, it used to be all philanthropic dollars.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the philanthropic givers said, well, we don't give ongoing operational money. We'll give money for a new project, and after 3 years, you need to be paid for it itself, which was a shock to these organizations. And so the more successful nonprofits are ones who have figured out a revenue source over and above the philanthropic dollar. And that, was a big change. So what is wealth? A lot of it is defining what's the value creation and what value am I creating? And I think that has a lot of challenges for many organizations. For
Hmm.
example, higher ed
Hmm.
as more and more people are challenging the cost of higher education, and whether it's for getting jobs. Well, we all know right now there's a challenge for that. So what's the value creation? So sometimes wealth is really maybe defined as value creation, and then money and other things fall from that, perhaps.
So interesting. Yeah, I think we are going through a huge change of values and concept and understanding and collaboration and relationship. Yeah, that was the topic of our newsletter yesterday. So
Oh, I
it's
look forward to reading it.
yeah, it's great to hear you say that. And it's so interesting for people that are listening that we seldom have somebody who has had the experience of corporate world, nonprofit world, small business, coaching, leadership, angel investing, and now supporting other people tell their story. It's such an interesting sort of mesh of experiences and knowledge and I guess wisdom. If you were to write yourself a letter to your younger self, to your younger Nancy, what are the things that you've learned that you didn't know when you
Yeah.
were a teenager, when you were in your 20s?
Well, the list is endless. One is the relationship with money. I grew up at a time, even in corporate, you didn't really share your salary with people. You didn't, even though we had sales contests, I would often win one, but not even realize I was competing for one. It was just a different time. But I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to do more things, try more things. particularly as a young working professional, you're in the job, you're focused on doing it, you have a friend group, a fun group, but you're oftentimes are not trying new things because you're apprehensive and you don't really know yourself. And what I do is talk to a lot of people since I've had a lot of different careers and since I jumped out of corporate, which we are now calling the new power move to leave that life and do something different. Um, I talk to a lot of people who are at career ends, so the mid-career 50 and above or 45 and above. And what's happening is they want to retire, they want to leave that job, but there's no sense of who I am and no sense of purpose. And they haven't really challenged themselves to try enough things to see what they want to do next. So I see too many people who get trapped into they think they're going to relax from the job and then they think they're going to de-stress and go on a lot of trips, which they do. And then there comes a time when they don't have an identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so continually challenging yourself to try new things to learn whether you want to do them. For example, years ago, we were all very happy in our corporate jobs and thought we were going to be there for a long time. We wouldn't accept calls from recruiters. I mean, what's the harm in talking to the person, maybe going on a few interviews? So never did that. The other thing is building your network outside of your job or personal friend group. I worked for IBM for almost 20 years. I've had another career for 20 years, well, 5 careers for 20 years. And my network now is so much different, so diverse,
Yeah.
and so much fun at the kind of people I get to know and meet. So long-winded way of saying, try more things, do more things, fail fast, but fail.
Yeah. Go out of your comfort zone. That's what I'm listening to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was recruiting for people to consider joining angel groups, I found a lot of really sharp people who were fascinated by. They would attend some meetings and be very fascinated, enthusiastic, and then they wouldn't join. And it wasn't the group so much, it was their fear of their ability to perform successfully as an investor, and often couched by I need to learn more, I need to take more classes before I do
Mhm.
everything. And
Mhm.
rather than jumping in, I'm not saying write a huge check, but maybe not investing, but just jumping in and helping with diligence or meeting with the entrepreneur. A lot of people wanted to feel like they were skilled before they tried something.
That's so interesting. It makes me think a lot about what we do in the educational system. So, as you know, I've been a professor many years in many universities, not only in America, around the world. And one of the things that I found when I was teaching was that when you go to school, if you do what is expected of you, you will pass, you will get a good grade. But if you're an entrepreneur, you can do that, and there's no guarantee.
Mhm.
And that creates a lot of fear, but it also creates a lot of confusion, especially in the young generation.
Yes.
And when I was teaching entrepreneurship and venture capital, I think the biggest lesson for the students was the recognition that the answer is not in the teacher, because that's what we teach. We
Yeah.
teach that the teacher is right and you need to learn from the teacher. So it creates this sort of very vicious circle. So the students only tell you what they think you want to hear, and they believe that the truth is in the teacher. And whenever I have taught at undergrad and graduate schools, the first two classes are always about breaking that and learning how to find within you what are you going to build your answer on. So it's not that you can say anything, but you need to substantiate that with your own experience, personality, contacts, whatever it is. And I think that's something that is missing in education. It's just, and in theory, in entrepreneurial theory, that's called internal locus of control or external locus of control.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you've had any experience, you talk to so many people about how do they create the story? How do they frame the way they think about themselves and their business so they can communicate better? What are the one or two things that we can do to help people understand that the answers are inside of them, that they don't have to know everything to take action? Because I think that's the biggest thing. You have to take action. And how do we support a person that might be listening that you're not going to know, I'm not going to know, but what have you learned that could contribute to their readiness or they feeling that I can take action and I can fail fast, like you just said?
Yeah. Well, we see that in education, exactly what you mentioned, sort of there's this, higher ed, goes way back to the Middle Ages, as we know, with the professor with all the robes. And, the professor is the king or queen of his or her classroom. As soon as that door shuts, they are the authority figure. And we continue that to this day. And I think for many people, it goes to the, workplace as well, particularly when people are new. The boss, we're looking for cues from the boss, and as you know, many bosses are not necessarily good at what they do. And so we're looking for cues for the boss. And as a result, we're always trying, a lot of the people I do career coaching for, also pro bono, is what gets me an A+ in the job,
Mhm.
what the
Yeah.
exact steps I need to do. And the same then transfers to the venture, people seeking venture money. And I use venture broadly to mean angels and VCs. Um, they're viewing the investor as all-knowing and the authority figure on what makes a successful company. And so what I try to do is talk to them, this is your company. What kind of company do you want to build? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have with this company? How do you want it to be known? Okay, now let's figure out the funding source for that kind of company rather than trying to change your company to be something that it's not. Now, in many cases, you should change it and you're okay with it, but most often they're trying to twist themselves into a pretzel. They aren't really forming a company that fits venture. And then what I fall into, I'm very supportive of it because frankly, most US companies have developed and grown through customer revenues, loans, not necessarily through venture, that's less than 1%, but there's great ideas out there. So how do
Mhm.
we get people to be confident in testing their idea super early, taking in info, but also being confident of what they think is the right path. And that's what I continue to try to focus. I see far too many, they'll approach me and say, well, I'm told unless I raise $1 million, I can't have a seed fund raise, or I'm told that I have to raise only 500. It's like, what are we talking about here? What kind of company is it? What are the milestones? How are we going to fund them? And that's, I think, something we can all do because there's far too much time wasted chasing this dream that most of them don't really understand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's because they're following, this is the authority figure. This is what all the press is about. This is what the role models do. And so we're again following that authority figure rather than looking in ourselves.
Yeah. And the dreams that we're building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not somebody else's dreams.
And I came very late to this. For example, I know I don't want to raise money and I don't want to sell myself, which is why I do largely pro bono. I don't want to, at this point in stage in my life, I don't want to go out, put my shingle out saying, please, here's how much I charge for consulting. I'd rather do it for free. Everybody's different, but
Yeah. Well, you
people
find
will say to me, you should charge your info is so invaluable. I don't want to.
you're going to get a lot of inbound calls from us, from
Yeah,
these
that's
people.
okay. I welcome them. But because it's fun and I get to know the people and, I have, as I said, a great network as a result and great new ideas.
And you are privileged.
Yeah,
You've worked, you've saved, you are in, you are in a position that you can do it. Not everybody can do it. It doesn't make
right,
you a better person, but you're doing what you want. And I think
right.
it's very, very important doing
But
what
there
you
was this whole fear thing. I had this idea of leaving IBM probably about 5 years before and took several moves in the interim because, of course, we moved every two and a half years. Um, But it was the fear of no income, being single, no income or less income. And, in the first two nonprofit jobs, the income was probably, 20%. But I basically continued to live off that. And now I'm in a position where I'm no longer as actively into investing because I am facing that I'm going to have to spend some of that money for some family members.
Yep.
And, that's more important to me than this investing right now. And so another reason why I continue to work with entrepreneurs, but tell them I'm not the investor, I'm the helper here.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But it goes back into doing what is good for you, what is a good fit. I
Yeah.
also left, well, I didn't leave corporate world. The company Bayer and Shell had a nonprofit. That was the only corporate world that I've ever had. Bayer and Shell had a joint venture, and I worked there as head of product development for 5 years. And then the company closed, but we knew
Uh-huh.
it was closing. I was one of the ones that stayed until the end. And they paid me 2 years of salary, which I lost for the financial crisis in Venezuela. That was in Venezuela. And I decided one year I had enough money to live off my investment, which is something very unusual for somebody that
Yeah.
grew up socialist with socialist parents. So money was something that, uh, according to my dad, people who were not very smart, they had to go into commerce. So it's like they're not very smart. That's why they go into business. But it's my dad was a romantic intellectual. But the interesting is I decided to give myself a year to do what I was passionate about, and I became the director of an opera house because I like operas. Had zero experience, but it just filled my heart. And I think, well, for once, I was very fortunate to be able to do that. But it goes back to what you're saying about doing different things because you also become a more fascinating person when you do those things, and they are at your fingertips. They're right there. You just don't
Yeah.
see it because, yeah, I think that's a great lesson for our audience. I really appreciate you highlighting that. um,
Yeah. I'm a big fan of a portfolio career. That's a term that's used a lot now, sort of like trying different things on this. Yeah, and obviously, when you maybe just out of college, first job, it's night and day. You're learning stuff. Maybe not, but soon after that, I do think I did not do that early enough. But and it also can help with the whole wealth thing. Um, I know people who have careers, they have a little stumble. They maybe were part of a startup. They had a stumble. I know one person hit a stumble and was going for another one. Uh, and they ended up buying some of these vending machines where you go once a week and fill up the vending machines and the app tells you which ones need filling up and made some spending money while in between and then sold those later on. And so, that's something I wished I had done and had more confidence. For example, having moved with IBM many times, I often purchased a condo or a house and then moved in very short order and lost money or whatever. I should have rented out some of those early on, but was so afraid of the perceived cost of running that house and could I get a tenant? And it wasn't really done when I was coming up. So it was lost opportunity. I'm not worried about it, but I would do it differently.
that is why we do this podcast, to
Yeah.
help people think differently. So thank you for that. Now you work a lot with women, and
Yes.
is there one or two things that you think should be more common in the conversations we have with other women, not just young women, just but other women in general?
I think that one of the reasons I focus on women because I am a big believer in mixed gender teams outperform single gender, but it's because the numbers are so bad as far as women, whether in a lot of different roles that you have to sort of over invest. And so that's why I chose to work largely with women. And we
Mhm.
know women are excellent managers, but when you look in a lot of companies, who do you see as the COO? Is the woman or the
Yeah,
marketing officer
yeah.
because we're often perceived as multitaskers, which is great. Women are excellent multitaskers, and so we often get in these roles where we're doing a number of things, but that are not the what I call line versus staff jobs oftentimes, not the line jobs driving it. On the other hand, women are great managers. They use money wisely. They invest. So most of it is confidence, building confidence for many, many people. And the other thing, particularly in the investment world, is a lot of women do start companies where the customer is a female. Think of retail, think of broadly. So learning how to communicate that to someone who doesn't come from that field in a way that they immediately see there's an opportunity here and they're not so blinded by their own experience. And that's probably the biggest challenge for anybody I meet with, male or female, is learning how to communicate what they're doing to a wide variety of people in a wide variety of backgrounds. Um, Too often they're talking to the customer and selling the product as opposed to the opportunity.
Yeah.
And because women often have to grab the attention, unfortunately, of other people more aggressively, they have to really sell that very much so. The other thing is just trying stuff. Again, not making sure every I is dotted, T crossed before we try something. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I also reflect upon that recently because I have one daughter and I have three granddaughters. And I didn't have the imposter syndrome. I had the delusional syndrome. So I was the other guy who's like, oh yes, I could do that. Oh yeah, I could do that. But I do notice that there's so much, I call it the discount factor.
yeah,
It's so much doubt about whether you can do things not only for women, it also happens in non-white guys.
yes, yeah.
So not just women. It also happens.
Another group of people I focus on a lot for same
Yeah.
reason.
Yes. And it's just because people can't think that you can do certain things because they've never seen it done by somebody that looks like you.
You're right.
And as I age, because I used to think everybody didn't care about that. But as I age, I do notice that the most important thing we can do is not let somebody else's insecurities about what you can do get into your head,
Yeah,
because it's their perception. I used to spend a ton of time thinking I'm going to educate them. Okay, all I need to do is protect my brain so that doesn't get into me. And but it is true. It is true. When I invest in men or women, I I just came back from Nigeria and they introduced me as an impact investor in women, and I said no. I invest in things that are good for humanity and for the planet, but they have to be profitable. They have to create good returns. And I
hmm,
don't invest in women. I invest in people. I invest in a person. And that was sort of shocking to them because they just assume, like everybody does, that if I'm a woman, I should invest in women.
yes,
That,
hmm,
you know how it is. But what I thought that was really interesting is that the recognition, and I have that because I have felt that if you are a woman founder, things are usually harder for you in terms of capital. So when I invest, I know I have to make sure I can accelerate income or sales or capital. Anything that has to do with cash flow, I need to be an agent more than just a passive investor. And I think that creates that virtuous circle that will undoubtedly raise the bar for everybody because the ideas are great. They work very
yeah,
hard. They're very good at managing assets. The return on assets is much higher than
yes. That's demonstrated time and time again.
yeah. So I think that is and like you said, creating your tribe. That's how we met actually, and
Yeah,
creating your tribe that you can call. Everybody's like, oh,
that's
what do you
right.
think? How are we going to help each
Yeah.
other? So I think that creates that.
And that's exactly right. What I see most often with these companies, great founder, great product, seems to be addressing the solution. You get some organic growth, and then the thing stalls because you can't really get the other growth. And often tell an entrepreneur if I give them advice and they want to keep up the relationship, they want me to join the board or they want me to invest. And I usually say, I'm not a smart investor because I can't help you get those next customers and or help you grow the company because of the subject matter expertise, let's say
Yeah,
food and
yeah,
beverage or
yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
So now let me help you. Let's go find somebody who can, because that's why I have an affinity for early stage, because I saw in particular women, but as you mentioned, other
Yeah.
underestimated founders who were terrific. But that early stage is the hardest. And if I'm not from your tribe, that looks like the VC that's assessing it, if I don't come from that background, it's much more difficult to give them credit for them to see that in somebody else. And these are social change problems. I often tell people, they say, well, all these facts show women run better companies. Yeah. And facts have shown in corporate for many years, women are great managers, women on boards are good. We've made progress, but it's still a slog. These are social changes that take a long time, and we have to keep pounding away at it.
We have to. Yeah, we
And
have to. That's how
jumping in early stage and helping a company achieve growth, I think is almost more invaluable than the money most of the time.
I firmly believe that. That has been my experience, and that's the way at the club, at the investment club that I run, that's the way we run
Yeah,
it. It's like we want to put a dollar, but we want to make sure that we dramatically de-risk the company by bringing in revenue very quickly
yeah,
and making sure you don't spend your money unwisely. Like there's a company that we're looking at now, and they are growing by geographies. And I was looking at their business model, and I'm having a call with the CEO. We haven't invested yet. I don't know if we're going to invest or not, but I noticed that they shouldn't grow by establishing geographically based sales rep. They should go by vertical integration and
verticals. Yep.
because this company in this industry has locations around the world, and the decision is going to be and it's going to be made in headquarters. So you need to have somebody that is well versed in that industry, not in that country, and that's one of the ways that we help founders. And
Yeah, and that usually to me is one of the main sticking. I mean, forget the fact that in some cases the product just doesn't address the challenge or the problem, but is usually the main sticking problem is if you want to grow fast, you want to be venture backable, the whole thing is the revenue growth.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you don't want to be, it's like everything in life. I was talking to an entrepreneur earlier before our conversation, and it's a woman. And she was telling me, I think it's time for me to look for a job because she's been trying to raise money and it's
Mhm.
hard. And I said, well, maybe, now with AI, maybe this, maybe that. But I told her, don't look for a job, look for revenue. It's because you don't need a job, you need income. So there's so many ways. So we started thinking about what do you need because at some point we need to pay our bills.
Yeah.
And she knows there's nothing wrong with that. And I said, yeah, but if you're going to spend a year and a half looking for a job, you're going to feel even worse. So look for any little source of revenue. You could do Uber, you can do other things, but just you know get some traction so you can feel good about getting income in the door, and then you figure out what you want to do with your
Yeah,
money.
that's a good advice, job versus income, I think.
Yeah, that
Back to if you've tried a lot of things and if you have a network, your opportunity to get little pieces of income are broader. If you've only ever been, I don't know, an accountant and now you're trying to do an accountancy startup, you only see accountant job, which is likely going to be a full-time job or a significant part-time as the only source of potential income. If you haven't tried things and if you haven't built a network, that's not all other accountants. And
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I when I was in college, I took care of my own income, and I did translations, I did typing, I make cookies.
mhm.
I taught physics because I like physics. I taught physics to the kids in my neighborhood. So it is exactly what you say, just having that broad set of skills. But it also gives you a sense that, no matter what, you'll figure out a way. Like
I
I
agree.
remember thinking, I'll iron. I don't know. I'll and it was not the time. I didn't grow up in a society where you can have part-time jobs. but there's always gigs. There are always things that you can do. So I think that's it's really important. This has been such a great conversation. Let me close this with a very profound, for me, very profound question that I ask my guests. And I don't know if you know this, but when I was 13, I fell off a horse and I was in coma. So
No.
yeah, so I was in coma for several days, and when I came back, and they didn't know if I was going to survive or not, and I saw myself dead. But when I came back to life, when I regained conscious, since then I realized, wow, I am going to die. So I live my life extremely grateful, but also with that sense that there has to be a purpose. And you touch upon having a purpose for some
Yeah.
for people. Have you thought about what is your purpose? What is your legacy? Who is Nancy? For the people that are not going to be able to meet you in person, who are you? What is your essence? What do you leave? And what is your purpose? What do you leave as a legacy?
This has been a big focus for me for many years. Actually, when I made the decision to leave IBM, since I was a very senior executive, it was a big shock
Mm-hmm.
to the officers of the company. And I remember saying to one, I don't want, as a joke, I don't want my tombstone to say she worked for IBM for 30 years and they all liked her. It was back to sort of what am I? A little later than I should have, but it's that sense of purpose. So what I finally decided after, and I didn't feel I had a skill set because I'm a general manager. But in each of those other environments I went into, my general management background really helped. And what I enjoyed the most was certainly achieving the goals of the organization, but was working with the team in particular to help them broaden their view of the world, their skills, feel proud of what they can do, feel ownership of their own job. And that's kind of what I try to do in all these jobs now. And particularly in this too, I want to help people realize their potential. And as a result, I get a lot of reward for that. And that as I want people to see me as someone who was straightforward, honest, trustworthy, but also a supporter and there to help them move forward. And that brings me the most positive feelings of all.
Yeah. Nancy, thank you so much for spending your time with us. I thoroughly enjoyed every single conversation that I have with you.
Well, thank you, Alicia, and always follow Wealthing and get great advice from all of you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Nancy is such a fun person to be with and so wise. I met her at an event for women, of course, at an angel group event for women, and we are mentors to women that are building companies in health tech. That is a project by our friend Lynn Locker from, she has a project called the W Project. And Nancy has gone all over the world, uh, teaching people, not just women, teaching people how to convey messages that resonate with the audience. That's her specialty. I love what she said about, trying new things, try new things. That is, I think, a great lesson. And the reflection that the education system makes you feel that if you're not well prepared, you're not meant to try new things. Yes, of course. I mean, you don't want to carry an operation without preparation, but there's ways that you can try new things and expand your horizons. This is your host, Alicia Castillo Holley, and thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for tuning in to our Wealthing Talks. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. To stay connected, visit us at wealthing.com. This is Alicia Castillo Holley, your host, and until next time, yours in Wealthing.